The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Southern California PGA Section Education Committee. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform where PGA professionals can gain valuable and relevant education in the many facets of our business in a convenient forum. This week's presenter is Ken Mengel of FOREFITNESS Golf Performance. Ken Mengel is a physical therapist with over 20 years expertise in orthopedic and sports rehabilitation. Ken was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley. He received his bachelor's degree in biology from Whittier College and his master's degree in physical therapy from USC in 1994. He is a certified level 3 TPI golf fitness professional and a specialist in movement analysis. Ken firmly believes that an athlete's foundation should be based on optimizing balance, speed, and strength with programs reflecting each individual athlete's unique needs. Good morning, Ken. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, John. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And good morning, all. Hope all are well on this Thursday morning. Well, with that, we'll take off. With forming FOREFITNESS, my partner Josh Loyal and myself, we got together and passionate about physical therapy, passionate about rehab and fitness performance, passionate about the game of golf, and started thinking, what is that most important piece of golf equipment? And it is absolutely our body, and that's why we brought FOREFITNESS into being. Our learning objectives quickly today to provide an introduction to FOREFITNESS, provide our mission and our vision for all of our golf athletes, to give an understanding of the role and the need for dynamic warm-up for all golf athletes. So many people running out and barely making a tee time or making it 10 or 15 minutes late to their scheduled practice time and teaching time with you, the pros, and get out and start swinging before their body's ever prepped and ready. So that's a big piece of what we do. Understanding the practical knowledge, the different needs that each golfer has. And by each golfer, we can kind of group them into juniors, into adults, into seniors, and then separating out on the adult end, the females from the males, because their needs can be unique based on physiology, simply that. And then an understanding of the critical role and timing of nutrition and hydration, especially as we get into our competitive golfers. So our mission, FOREFITNESS, is dedicated to helping each and every golfer train properly to reach the pinnacle of their performance by becoming the athlete their game deserves. And I know that you all have seen that shift in golf in the last 20 years especially, but especially I'd say even more so in the last 10 years, where the athletic demands of the game of golf have become more and more evident, and that's being shown and seen in the body types of those that are coming out and playing. So we're wanting to make sure that each person is equipped to compete at that level, and is also equipped to where you have the best tool to teach by. So our goals with FOREFITNESS, we want to build a physical foundation to create an efficient, powerful swing. We want to give people that combination of strength, of power, of flexibility, and of balance to where they can do the foundations of a good, efficient golf swing. We want that because we're playing the game for a long time. We love the fact that it's a generational game. One of the things I love is every year my dad and my son and myself get to travel up into the Sierras and do a week of fishing and hiking, and the golf clubs always go in the bag, and we get at least a round or two in up there. And to have 3 generations of us out playing the game that we all enjoy, and having that time on course together is absolutely priceless. And that's part of what we want to build into this, is make sure people have that longevity. We want to work on building a golf team with the golfer, the professional, and the trainer. And that allows the golfer ultimately to be the one that wins in the end. If we can help take that golfer that's a square peg and give that square peg a few rounded edges to where you, the professional, can get them fitting in that hole a little bit better, getting them moving in the way that you feel is most efficient and most appropriate for their game, then that's our goal with FOREFITNESS, is to be that component. So our process, we go through a formal screening. My partner and I both have gone through the Titleist Performance Institute training certification, and believe that with our physical therapy background coupled with the golf-specific process they've put through their screening, we really can identify the needs of each individual golfer. We take a look at everything from range of motion, quality of that motion, so not only the quantity of a motion, but how do they move through that motion? Are there compensations to get into those movements and those positions? We look at strength, we look at balance, we look at general coordination, and picking out those pieces as it relates to the needs of the golf swing is how we come upon the program that we will create. And every golfer's program is and should be unique in our mind, and that's what our process starts with. What makes FOREFITNESS unique compared to other golf performance professionals out there is our physical therapy background. I think two key components with that are, as physical therapists, we are trained and honed in the sense of looking at movement, looking at quantity of movement, looking at quality of movement, knowing what goes into each and every movement, from the muscle action to the joint motions to when things should be firing, when things should be off. And our ability then to look at that and put our hands on somebody is completely different than, say, a fitness instructor or a certified personal trainer who may have a great eye and a great knowledge, but if they can't put their hands on somebody, it does have some limitations. So we're able to intervene directly in cases of movement impairment. And that allows us, in many cases, to make an immediate change that can impact the person's ability to train as well as the person's ability to swing, and therefore go through their instruction, play around, etc. So we've had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with Jerry He, who's on the PGA China Tour, and we started working recently with Ximing Feng of the LPGA, and both have unique limitations. We're going to go over Jerry's case right here. Jerry's got some limitations bilateral in his hips. He's got some capsule limitations. The capsule is the joint tissue that go back to this previous one here. The joint tissue that is a hardy tissue, and it actually surrounds the joint. It's like saran wrap for the joint. And with that saran wrap on the joint, it can become tight. When it's tight, it's going to limit that mobility. So ideally, the hip should have 45 degrees of rotation inward, 45 degrees of rotation outward. Jerry, unfortunately, has about 30 degrees of rotation internally, and that's on both his right and his left hip. So his backswing is impaired by his right hip mobility. His follow-through is impaired by his front hip, his left hip mobility. Oh, don't freeze on me here. We'll do a little troubleshooting here. Sorry about that. We may have to go just in. All right. My apologies. I'm going to run it in this format just to make sure we don't have any other glitches. But Jerry, we put Jerry through a series of both movement components to improve his mobility of his hip, doing a deep squat with some internal rotation motions, trying to warm and lubricate that joint, get those tissues moving a little more freely. We also put Jerry into a position where this band that's on his left hip is actually providing a lateral pull force, kind of bringing ball out of socket, so to speak, and trying to get a little more stretch on that joint. We've also done some manual techniques with him, trying to get some stretch, some mobilization of that hip. And after about 15 to 20 minutes of going through some movement, some hands-on technique with him, we're able to gain about 15 degrees of motion. So he is just short of 45 degrees here on his range of motion and his hip rotation after going through the intervention. And from that point, we then take him into his training. And at the same time, the same kind of things that we can do prior to a round on course and get him more ready to play that round with an efficient swing. We also believe that, as with anything, what you do away from the course, what you do on your downtime is as critical as anything. And I know that you all are firm believers in practice doing things appropriately is the best way to get a good carryover onto the performance end. So some examples of some home programs, we do everything from, you see the cherry picker trunk rotations work on hip hinge mobility, trying to get that forward hip bend, trying to keep a neutral spine, then also trying to really work the rotation end off of the spine. So range of motion, hip flexibility, stability. Coupling that with the band reverse flies works a lot on the shoulder stability, the core stability. And then by bringing the rubber band in with the hips, you also get a lot of the hip strength, getting the glutes to fire and getting those ground stability forces. Simple activities that are often overlooked include mobility at the ankle. So getting some stretch in the ankle, making sure that the players have that ability to load through the ankles because, again, everything coming from the ground up, if you lose that first joint, then you've lost it and you're going to compensate the rest of the way up along the way. So our performance training. Performance training is customized by the physical limitations, so the screening is really key. We also customize it by the person's age, their gender. So senior golfers, some common needs that we see often are mobility and strength. You'll find that the knowledge of what to do oftentimes is there. The ability physically to do it becomes the compromise, and that's part of our goal is be able to restore some mobility in necessary areas. Hips and thoracic spine especially is what we find. And then strength, typically what we find is in through the hips, the glutes, and in through the core muscles are very common areas with the senior golfers. Our junior golfers can be a little bit of everything. Sometimes you get these kids that have grown 3, 4, 5 inches over the course of a year, and they kind of have that baby giraffe or baby deer kind of movement. They are long and gangly, but they don't have the stability, they don't have the balance, they don't have the strength and the power yet, and part of it is developing that coordination on how to use their body. A lot of programs with the junior golfers are very play-like, and it keeps it fun and interesting for the young junior golfers, but it keeps it functional. The female golfers, typically it's a strength and a power stability issue. Many of our female golfers have a lot of motion, but again, that control of the motion, that ability to stop a car when it's moving fast, the ability to decelerate what they've accelerated has become an issue. And then our professional golfers can be a combination of any of the above, but really the key there, and this is on our professional or our college level golfers, programs need to fit the demands of their season. And that means during the season, your training regimens, our training regimens with them are going to be very, very different than they will be during the off season. That's because we don't want to create a sore golfer going out to competition, but we want to create a golfer that's kind of reached that peak coming into season, and then during season, we are maintaining and carrying them through with some specific drills with their specific needs in mind. So training the senior golfer. Had the pleasure of working with Jerry Wiz from Director of Golf at Alhambra Golf Course, and his big need and concern has been restoration of some thoracic spine mobility, or at a minimum, managing and controlling a reduction in his loss of mobility. So on the left side of the slide here, we have him doing some open book stretches, some nice, easy, prolonged hold stretches, and then we couple that with an active motion activity, trying to then take the new motion that we found and educate the muscles on how to use it, and putting them into a simulated golf-type posture with that hip hinge and the knees bent. And then the other area of mobility for Jerry is working on the hips and trying to get hip rotation mobility, getting the glutes to stabilize. So here we have them in a plank position, working on core stability, stability through the shoulders, but also working on that hip rotation range of motion and the ability to disassociate his hips from his trunk, so keeping a stable trunk while keeping mobile hips here. The female golfer has some totally different needs. The key here is the graph on the right, and you don't need to memorize the graph, don't even try and memorize the graph, but just note the variation in the peaks and spikes and valleys on this graph. If this was a male golfer's hormone graph, you'd see, relatively speaking, flat lines across there. There may be some small ups and downs, some small sways in the lines of the male hormone levels, and again, the hormones would be different hormones. However, with the female, throughout their menstrual cycle, you've got a roughly 28 to 30-day cycle. In there, you have a period of 3 to 5 days of stiffness you have a period of 5 to 7 days of extreme laxity of joints, which is where injury rates go up, especially in knees. You see the classic injury with the female athlete is the ACL injury. And that ACL injury in most female athletes happens between day 10 and day 16. And in there, you have about 75% of all ACL injuries for female athletes. This is what we want to be aware of. This is what many people are not aware of, and they train their female athletes as if they're just any athlete coming in the door. Primary needs of the females, again, strength and stability, oftentimes more than mobility. But that knowledge of when to do which phase, how do you load them, how aggressively do you train them, is really a critical piece. Oftentimes, you'll have some female athletes, day 1 of their menstrual cycle, which is when they start the period, they'll come in and they feel great. It's one of the best days of their cycle for them, and you can train them, and you can train them heavy, you can train them hard, and you can work them to the ground. Some come in and they don't feel so good for the first 3-4 days, and you need to modify training programs, and the awareness of why they may not be feeling so well is key. So I would encourage any physical trainer, any golf instructor, golf professional, any teacher, know your female athletes and make sure that you have an open, honest conversation with them. You're not prying into their personal life. You're wanting to know kind of where they are, when did they start, what is their day 1 of their cycle, and from that point you can kind of gauge how you're going to teach, train, exercise, whatever you're going to do with them, on-course skills, things like that. But you may then have a better idea as to why they fluctuate and where they're at in their cycle and what you can do to accommodate that. We've actually written an article on the female golf athlete, and you can find that at our website at forefitnessgolf.com for a lot more information than this. All right, so training the female athlete, again, looking at that stability component. Tiffany Joe has been training with us and working with a lot of core stability, the ability, again, to control her pelvis, control her midsection, allow her better dissociation, allow her better deceleration. So that key component of being able to accelerate a Porsche to 100 miles an hour, if you don't have a good set of brakes in there, you probably don't want to take that car up too fast. Same thing with our golf athletes, any rotational athletes. Many hundreds of degrees per second of rotation are fantastic to get velocity and power to the ball, but if you don't have the ability to decelerate as soon as that impact has happened, you can be in trouble and be risking injury. So training the adult versus training the junior golf athlete. For the adults, the only limitations really are their past history and their ability to drive themselves. With juniors, you have other limitations. You have coordination impacts with, especially around times of growth spurt. That can pose a risk in terms of injury if they're not able to move in a coordinated fashion and move safely. So technique and safety, always key with all of our athletes, particularly with our juniors, and setting a foundation for them. The youngest junior males, one of the key things to know, and this is, again, one of the physiology ends with the testosterone, is the youngest junior males lack testosterone needed for true strength training. So we're not going to take a 12 or 13-year-old boy and put him under a squat rack and have him lifting heavy loads because, one, he doesn't have the testosterone on which to build muscle mass with at large degree, and two, the growth plates are not yet fully matured. And the last thing we want to do is put somebody at risk for an injury to growth plates that could hamper them in the long term. So though you can't and should not load with excessive loads the young junior, doesn't mean you can't build strength. And a lot of that strength building comes from coordination building. A lot of that comes from game playing, and a lot of that game playing can be put in the positions and the physical demands of what the golf swing is, so you can get direct carryover that way. So working with the adult golf athlete, Scott here has some shoulder issues. He's got very little range of motion issues in his thoracic. He's actually got, on the screening exam, passed it very well, but he has some old shoulder issues, and we're working here on controlled shoulder, shoulder girdle stability, rotator cuff strength, and then working these ground up forces, anchoring the feet to the floor, keeping the knees in a good stable position, keeping the hips moving. one of his other issues is he's got some hip strength issues that were identified. And you look at him, he looks like a fit young athlete. We tested him through, and overall his upper body strength testing was pretty good, except for the one shoulder. His hip was where he actually failed with the most obvious strength deficits on his exam. So putting him through some power work, trying to get him to load through that right hip and drive up and out of there. And again, just some examples of some of the basic exercises that can be done with the golf athletes. Our juniors, on the other hand here, you can see Catherine here on the left side. She's a junior at Walnut High School. She's kind of got that baby deer, baby giraffe type of body, long and gangly, not a lot of coordination. So here, just working on getting core activated with shoulder stabilizers, activated with a dynamic motion on the bottom, getting a little bit of explosion and some quick motions here. And then Ricky is actually a pretty coordinated young man, but his need is an ability to put it all together with regards to his power component. Rick is the classic workout in the gym 5 to 6 days a week, but he does chest and arms day, and he does back and arms day, and he doesn't really do a lot of leg day. Self-stated that doesn't like it, which is typical of a lot of our juniors. They kind of work the beach look versus working the functional look. All right. So periodization. Periodization basically is saying, how do you train somebody throughout the course of a year or the course of a season? There's preseason, there's in-season, and there's postseason. During those times, the training needs need to vary. So some of the exercises that we saw there would be more a preseason and a postseason type of a program. Some of those could be done in season. You just modify the volume of it. But during season, we do a lot of things on just trying to get motor programs, just trying to work on what that person's critical needs are. And a lot of that comes from speaking with the teachers, speaking with their coaches, and finding out where their needs are with regards to deficiencies, weaknesses, or focus points in their golf. So here we do a drill where we're working on really keeping head still, really keeping hips and pelvis still relative to the trunk, and focusing on simple control, movement paths versus really trying to blast out strength at this phase of the game. If you're trying to gain strength during the season, you're trying to gain strength too late. And again, you don't have a sore golfer that moves efficiently. So nutrition, I think now that we're out of the videos, we can get back in here. Nutrition plays a big role in what we do. We don't do an hour-long sit-down and counsel, but we're constantly talking to our golfers about the important needs of nutrition. You can kind of break nutrition into 3 main components: hydration, whole foods, and supplements. Hydration, looking at how much do they drink, how much does a person need to drink. Considering that the body is 60 to 70% water and the brain is 80% water, we better keep ourselves hydrated. They say up to 2% of dehydration is enough of a dehydration level to start to create lack of clear thinking, lack of fluid thoughts, and then that would go to a lack of coordinated movements, because that 2% is enough of an effect on the brain to create that. The person needs, everybody needs, their body weight divided by 2 ounces of water a day. So a 150-pound individual is going to need about 75 ounces of water a day, and that's kind of on a minimum need. That's a daily need. Extra level of exertion, high heat days, things like that, you want to up that amount. Whole foods, what do we mean by those? Basically, if you can see it and identify it by what you're looking at on the plate or in the bowl, then that's a good thing. If you can look at something and you can see that it's made out of corn, if it is a piece of chicken, if it is a leaf of lettuce or a piece of spinach, those are good things to be able to identify and see. If you look at it and it's white and it's got a uniform shape and you can't really tell what's in it, it's probably the kind of thing that you want to eat in an absolute minimum quantity. So processed foods, things like that, we try and really encourage our people to minimize, not necessarily avoid, but minimize. So proteins are part of whole foods, critical for tissue healing, critical for muscle growth and maintenance of muscle growth and strength. Males require about 3 to 2, or half again, amount of protein as females do. Fats are necessary, so a no-fat diet or low-fat diet isn't necessarily the way to go. You want to be on a smart fat diet. You want to be on fats that are complex in nature. The fats that are omega-6, omega-3 fatty oils, things that you'll find in nuts, things that you'll find in foods like avocados, things that you'll find in foods like salmon and other fish that have very, very great qualities and necessary, again, for brain function. Carbohydrates in moderation. So you want to avoid things that are simple sugars. You want to avoid things that are syrupy. You want to go with things that are a little more complex. Brown rices, whole grain foods, fruits and vegetables. And watching your fruits, because fruits can be very high in straight sugar. So vegetables tend to have a little bit more of a complex carbohydrate, which means they break down a little slower. They give you a lower, longer release of energy versus a quick release that you get on these high glycemic index foods. Like if you snack on an orange versus snacking on an apple, the orange goes straight to blood system quickly and gives you a quick rush of energy, and then it crashes quickly. An apple, being more fiber-based, gives you a little bit more of a slow release, and you don't get that spike and crash. And then the big game nowadays people talk about is supplements. So we don't do a lot of talk to our athletes about what they need to supplement with, but we do talk with them about if they are going to. Some of the simple things are, again, fatty acids in the omega-3s, vitamin D, which is actually a hormone, which is a fantastic supplement to work on brain function, and then anti-inflammatory herbs and things like that in their foods that will minimize irritation of tissues. So cumin, rosemary, turmeric, things like that, things you can cook with and use on an everyday basis that'll just help the body minimize its irritation cycles. So basic pre-round nutrition, protein, you want to get something good in there. The old thought of bacon and eggs, don't eat too much bacon, don't eat too many eggs. Moderation is everything, but bacon and eggs are actually a really great pre-round nutrition. A couple pieces of whole wheat toast, a great way to get your body started. Every morning when you wake up, you're waking up in a fasting state, so your body's craving some food. It's been 8, 10, 12 hours since it last had something in it. The last thing you want to do is ask it to go out and perform at a high level when the tank is empty. During round nutrition, you want to keep it relatively simple, straightforward. Again, things you can see, nuts, beef jerky, a bag of carrots or snap peas or things like that, an apple, something that you can snack on over a period of time that's going to be kind of slow into the system. It's going to keep you satiated and happy. It's not going to overload you. And then during the round is when you're looking at about 50% of your water intake for the day. So days where it's warmer, you're going to even increase that amount. But during the round, you should be constantly sipping on something and keeping that hydration level up. Because, again, critical late in the round mistakes could be due to that 1 or 2% of dehydration that people see by not replenishing that hydration level. Post-round nutrition, eat. You want to eat as soon as you can after you get done playing a full round of golf. You want to eat after going through your workout program. You want to eat after you're training with your coach. So eating and hydrating ASAP, again, 25% of your hydration afterwards, but you're eating afterwards. You're a little more free here. You want to have some protein, you want to have some fat, you want to have some carbohydrate because your body has gone through and depleted a bit of each of those systems. And you want to be able to replenish that so where your body's going to bounce back and be able to perform again that next day. So if you are working with your athletes out there and you have them coming in either first thing in the morning or especially those that are coming in mid-morning and mid to late afternoon, one of the things you may want to ask them is, when did you last eat and when did you last drink? Or what did you last eat and what did you last drink? And start to kind of get a knowledge of, one, what their habits are, because if they're showing up at 6 in the morning and they rolled out of bed and came in with absolutely nothing in their stomach, maybe encouraging them to have an apple in the car on their drive over is not a bad way to do it, or a thing of yogurt before they leave the house. Get a little something in their system with a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat, a little bit of carbohydrate to get them going. The ones that are dangerous are those ones later in the morning and late in the day. They come to you at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, or they come to you at 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon, and that person at 5 in the afternoon hasn't eaten since lunch at 12, and lunch at 12 was a quick small salad and a piece of fruit or a piece of yogurt, or maybe they didn't have anything, or that person in the morning at 10 o'clock doesn't eat breakfast, but they had a piece of toast with their coffee in the morning. Now it's at 7 o'clock. Those people are likely to see not only poor performance, but they are subject to having other issues of hypoglycemic incidences, things like that, where they can have dizziness, they can have loss of conscious episodes. Their risk level is higher. So encouraging them to have something in their system an hour, no more than 2 before they come in. You don't want it any closer than an hour because you don't want them trying to digest their food while they're going through their physical activities. But an hour to 2 before they come in, they need something in their system. So again, like with your female athletes, really kind of getting to know them and their habits and their points and their phases of cycle. Get to know all your golf athletes and get to know what their tendencies are, what their habits are with regards to when do they eat, when do they drink, and are they at a point where they're putting themselves at risk for poor performance on the low end of the scale, but also some potential issues on the medical side of things. So one of our firm beliefs is a dynamic warm-up. So the thought of ever driving a car without oil in the pan, or back in the days of days gone by in the 70s, if you wanted to hop in your 1970 Pontiac and take a drive on a January morning, you had to go out and warm that up about 15 minutes before you took off from the curb. This is the same thing with our bodies. Our tissues are all what they call viscoelastic tissues, meaning they respond best when warm. They're going to be more elastic, they're going to be more receptive, more adaptive, and that's what we want to do with our dynamic warm-ups. Dynamic warm-ups should take no more than 10 minutes to kind of get the body moving with. And their purpose is warm up the core, get the core muscles activated. The core basically is everything from the seat of your pants, so your glutes, all the way up through the floor of the pelvis, into your abdominals, and all the way up to your diaphragm. Getting things moving in a dynamic fashion gets the muscles throughout the body more ready to act, increases circulation, increases joint mobility. All of those components prime the joints and tissues, and in priming them, they decrease their risk for injury, strain, etc. So again, we have an article with a lot more information on our website, and would encourage you guys to visit that. I think that you'll find it interesting on some of the data that's there. So a couple of examples of a dynamic warm-up. Mark Anguiano is playing on the web.com tour this year and working on. These are things that all can be done on course. So dynamic warm-up, we encourage our athletes. Mark's got a couple pieces of TheraBand actually in his bag, takes it out to course with him. So before he hits the range, goes through his series of exercises, and these are just a couple examples of them. This particular exercise helps to get side end mobility. He's in lunge position, so he's not kneeling. He's actually holding a lunge. So he's got the glutes activated, he's got the thigh muscles activated. And going through the motions of the trunk, he's activating core muscles. He's pulling that TheraBand apart, so he's got shoulder girdle muscles activated, rotator cuff activated, really a whole body activation here. He is in a more golf-specific position in his address, again, engaging shoulder blade muscles, engaging rotator cuff, feet are into the floor, and we encourage, in these positions, we have our athletes kind of twisting the feet, almost screwing their feet into the floor as they're going through the motion here, really trying to activate the thighs into the glutes and getting those ground reaction forces starting to work for them. He'll do this motion about 15 times in each direction. So some other dynamic warm-up activities, simple as having the athlete go through and perform a lunge, going into squat position, and there's a deep squat position, if people are able to, is a wonderful position because one, it activates the thighs, it activates the glutes. You can't get into a squat without getting your ankle mobility happening. Most people, again, core activation is one of the weak points. To do a full squat, you have to be able to activate your core. You can then take this and you can add mobility over the top of it. You can have weight shift from right to left. You can have weight shift forward to back and start to open up the hips a little bit, getting that hip rotation like we saw with Jerry, getting that flowing and moving. Wrist mobility, simply as much as moving the wrists up and down. You can have them do some grip and grasping activities, but to get the forearms up and ready, in order for the wrist to move, the shoulders have to be stable, so it's a good shoulder stabilizer. some lateral walking against the band down on the left corner here, some hip hinging activity to get through flexibility in the hamstrings and the glutes. And none of these, if you notice, are going to be the classic put your leg up on a bench and lean forward and hold it for 30 seconds and stretch. The difference between a dynamic warm-up and a static stretch is great. Dynamic warm-ups are designed to do just that, to warm you up, to get your body ready to move. Static stretching is best performed on a tissue that's already hot and warm, and that static stretching is actually shown best to perform after the completion of a training activity, after teaching, after training. It's actually shown to delete or to have a negative effect on performance if you perform it beforehand. So having somebody stretch their hamstrings, having somebody stretch their calves, having somebody stretch something through even their shoulders for a long static hold, and then have them go and perform an activity that requires explosive power is going to show a depletion of explosive power. So again, knowing when to have somebody perform an exercise, knowing when to have somebody perform an activity is really critical, and we are very, very big proponents of the dynamic component of the warm-up. All right. Are there any questions on anything?
Yes, Ken, I had a question come in regards to back to the nutrition portion that you covered. With so many people in an attempt to always be trying to lose weight and watch their figures, how does that dieting play a role into your training when you're recommending a balanced diet?
Absolutely. If somebody is really looking to get onto a particular diet for purpose, so whether it's loss of weight or people looking to gain muscle mass, things of that nature, we provide them kind of the basic idea and thought process. We have a couple of nutritionists in our area that we work with closely as well, that when somebody is really looking to take that next step and really get on a professionally controlled or managed instructed diet, that's where we step back and we say, you know what, let's get you to the experts there. Regardless, though, the principles remain the same. You want to make sure that the person is getting that balance of food. Some people will say, well, I don't want to go see the nutritionist, don't necessarily want to spend the money on that, but can you just give me some guidelines? And really one of the best guidelines out there is the 40-30-30 principle. 40-30-30 adds up to 100, and it's basically saying about 40% of your caloric intake for a day should come from protein, 30% should come from good fats, and 30% should come from complex carbohydrates. So I often have my people, just because it's a good honesty technique, keep a diet log for about a 10-day period. And most people would be really good for keeping it for about a 4 or 5 day period and kind of start to fall off. But if you can get people to keep it for a 10-day period, and that diet log literally is anything that goes in your mouth goes on paper. And what I want to know is, I don't need to know that it was 6 ounces of chicken, but you know what? I had a small, medium, or large chicken breast. I had this. I had a bowl of this. I had a handful of nuts at this time. I had a chocolate clock at night. I had one of my clients just recently because he's been looked to gain mass and trying to coach and count on ways to where he can actually put on body weight and put on some size and do it in a lean muscle manner. And he brought in his diet log, and it included things of, he had a whole category of late night snack. And I asked him, I said, well, what's late night? He said, well, it's about 11 o'clock because he doesn't go to bed until noon. He gets up at about 9 in the morning. I said, okay, well, what time is late night? He said, oh, it's about 11 or 12, sometimes it's 1. And one was a slice of pineapple upside bake with a Coke, and the other was 2 scoops of ice cream with chocolate syrup and a Coke, and things like that I looked at and said, okay, well, maybe we need to change some of these pieces here. His daily dietary components weren't that bad, but if you're having trouble with managing, he wanted to manage his belly and put on some mass on legs and his upper body. If you're having trouble managing belly component, maybe we need to look at these things honestly. Maybe other Cokes in the course of a week isn't what we should be looking at here. Maybe we need to supplement differently. Maybe we need to find another alternative for you. What else makes you happy? And so those are all key components there. But that 40-30-30 principle is really a good basic component dietary log is the best way to keep somebody.
Another that I had, just to actually cover one thing you just mentioned there. You said the 40-33 diet should be composed of what again? You said 40% protein, 30% fats, and 30% complex carbs?
Correct.
Now that's even in a weight loss type situation where the student is attempting to lose pounds.
That's correct. And if you're going to cut anything on a weight loss end, you typically want to cut on the carbohydrate end. The reason being the first energy source the body do to burn for energy is carbohydrate. So if you always have a store of carbohydrate, then you're always going to go that first for burning. Carbohydrate in excess in the body gets stored as fat. So it gets converted over and stored as fat store. If we're looking to lose weight, and if we're looking to, hopefully when we lose weight, lose fat, the thing that we want to do is force the body to go to fat to burn. So fat actually, when it's burned in the body, burns more efficiently. Fat's a hot, longer burning fire than carbohydrate. Carbohydrate burns hot and quick and it's gone. Fats burn nice and warm, but they burn for a long time, give you long sustainability. So if body doesn't have the carbohydrates in excess to go to and really at hand to go to, the next energy source goes to burn is fat. And that's where your weight loss comes in. That's where your body composition changes come in. And that's where also educating people that may not see a big difference in their body weight on occasion when they're going through a quote-unquote weight loss diet. They may find that their pants are now fitting differently. The belt is a notch or two in on the belts, on notches when they wear that. So that's a good indicator. Clothes fitting is an indicator of body weight. The fat content, if you can force them to go to burn fat by cutting their carbohydrate sources, that's the best way to weight loss.
Those are all the questions I have at this point.
Okay.
Any other questions from anybody in the field? So I've got one here. In response to students saying yoga made me too flexible, is this even possible? Can you be too flexible?
Certain body types can be too flexible. You typically see it more in females than males. It's uncommon. You do have body types that, and there's different tests that you can kind of put someone through. You look at wrist flexibility, elbow flexibility, knee flexibility. If people have the ability to hyperextend or kind of go into excessive motion at all of those joints, body has a general tendency to be what we call hypermobile. It's kind of lax joints. Some people would say they're double jointed. That's a bad thing only if you don't have the strength and the coordination to control it. So what I would say to that is strength training on its own is fantastic, but it's got limitations. Yoga training on its own is fantastic, but it's got limitations. Pilates on its own is fantastic, but it's got limitations. I think what happens is that balancing act of yoga for flexibility is a great activity. It's a great body awareness activity. It's a great flexibility and mobility activity. But if you don't train the strength over the top of that and how to control it and the coordination on how to control that newfound range, you may feel again like you are that you have ranges that you quite know how to control or what to do with. And that's where I would say the cross-training effect is really probably the most important thing. I believe firmly that everybody should be doing some form of strength training. I also believe that everybody should be doing something to work on their flexibility and at least a management of their flexibility, if not a gain of further flexibility in most cases. But that blending of the components is really the key, because no singular exercise program or thought process has all the answers. So my bet is it's kind of a component of they gained mobility in the yoga, but they didn't gain the knowledge of how to use that ability or control that mobility and that's where they're feeling that excess. You see that a lot with dancers as well. You get those so mobile and so flexible. So former gymnasts are the same way, so mobile, so flexible, but if they maintain their strength to control it, see issues.
Okay, I don't have any other questions that have come this time.
Okay.
Ken, I would like, on behalf of the California PGA, I would like to thank you for your time and your presentation this morning. I mean, it's all visceral stuff. And for more information, a lot of the presentation here and the limited time that we have is not as granular as some would like. So for more information, please visit FOREFITNESS Golf at forefitnessgolf.com, and for questions specifically for Ken, you could email him at fitnessgolf@gmail.com for more information. Thank you very much, Ken, for your time this morning. I want to thank everybody for participating today. I want to encourage everybody to tune in to our next Catalyst webinar on March, where Andy Hiltz of Golf Tech will be presenting, and then 2 weeks after that, on March 23rd, we have Joe of Tur USA, the principal of that company. Prior to that, he was the CEO of Sequoia Golf, which was a fairly large management company that sold to Club Corp. And before that, he was CEO of American Golf, back when American Golf had upwards of properties. So looking forward to the next few presenters, and the quiz going out here shortly. Please take the quiz and return it to Sharon Kerfman at pgaage.com. A score of 70% or higher will earn 1 MSR credit for attending today's webinar. Thanks again, Ken from FOREFITNESS Golf. Certainly enjoyed it.
Thank you all.
And everyone have a great day. Thank you very much.